Hi, welcome everybody. It's Friday and welcome to all of you that are joining. My name's Simi Ritt. I'm the principal psychologist and founder of Wellbeing Face, the psychology, coaching and consulting practice. And we focus in really helping leaders to elevate their leadership impact, looking at three main areas: productivity, inclusion, and well-being. So I really want to extend a big warm welcome to everyone that's joining. We are streaming live today on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So welcome to those of you that are here. Please let me know that you're here. Post me a little message, give me a little wave in the comments. It's always great to know that you're listening. And for those of you that watch the replay, welcome. I'm really excited about today's show. I've got a guest that's going to be joining us very, very shortly. And today's topic is all in line with what we've been talking about the whole of this week for International Women's Day. The theme is Break the Bias. Now, if we're to imagine a world where gender equality is there, where we're free from bias, stereotypes, and prejudices, it does sound like a tall order, but today in the conversation that we'll be having with my lovely, lovely friend and fabulous guest, Rhonda Y. Williams, we'll be looking at how to simplify it all through self-leadership. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome on the screen our guest, Rhonda Y. Williams. Hi, Rhonda, welcome.
Thank you so much, Simi. It's so great to be here with you.
It's always good to see you, Rhonda. Firstly, how are you? How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. It's been an amazing week. It's been an amazing month. 2 days ago, it was International Women's Day, which was amazing. And so I am really, really well.
Fantastic. Tell me, how did it go for you? What did you do on International Women's Day?
Yeah, so I started Women's Day, of course, with an amazing award ceremony by the GCPIT team, which is an international team really focused on trade, but really interestingly through leadership and creating sustainable, impactful leaders across the globe. So I was one of 150 women that were awarded the Global Women in Leaders 2022 award, which was just wonderful. And it's something when you have to come up with a little 90-second acceptance speech, right? I was like, oh gosh, what do I say?
I'm sure you were amazing. Look, firstly, congratulations. That's fantastic. And it comes to no surprise, Rhonda, you're really making so much impact in this area, and it's wonderful to see that recognized. So big congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's hard work, something I'm really passionate about. But you know what? When they say when you love what you do, you don't ever feel like you're working, right?
No, I know. I feel like my family have to prize me out of my office. Obviously I love them to bits, but when you're absolutely passionate about what you do, you can just keep going for hours and hours. Yeah. So Rhonda, we're here today to talk about gender bias, obviously in line with the theme for International Women's Day, but also spinning it a little bit in a different way to talk about it from the lens of self-leadership. And, before we dive into that topic, I would love for you just to share a little bit about your background, because you've got a fascinating background. I think it'd be great for the audience to just get a bit of a context and understanding of where your journey has come from and what it's been like.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Philadelphia, and having fun there with my Eagles and just everything that Philadelphia brings: cheesesteaks and chicken wings and all that good stuff. And then through my journey, I went into nursing school. and became a registered nurse. And so I had young children. I have 3 sons, and I was married at the time and went into nursing school. And my journey into nursing was really interesting because I never really wanted to become a nurse. I was like, oh, I don't think that's me. I'm not sure if this is the right thing for me. But it was the most satisfying thing once I got into it, because the ability to have an impact on the lives of people who are in really vulnerable positions and situations was something that I hadn't anticipated it affecting me that way. So I began to climb and rise through the ranks there, got promoted and bounced around a little bit, did some interim leadership things before I was promoted into the chief nursing officer position. Which is the largest department in any hospital, is the nursing and clinical area. So that was an amazing opportunity for me to lead in a very different way. But
Mhm.
Simi, when I went into that role, and this
Yeah.
speaks to self leadership, when I went into that role,
Mm.
I was a good nurse. I knew the organization, so I was confident there. I didn't have any formal leadership skills or training, right? I was just sort of doing my thing, and
Yeah.
which was going okay. But that really did was the beginning of my passion around self leadership,
Mhm.
because I did the best that I could. So I did really well in that position, and I think we accomplished some great things in our organization. I went on to become promoted and to rise into the position of hospital CEO, and did that for a while before I ended up hitting a couple of really major life crises. So by this time, I had been working with the organization for nearly 17 years. I ended up losing my job. You don't have enough time on this show for me to go into the details around that crazy. One of these days, we could have a discussion just on that, because it does have to do with bias and all of those types of things. But I ended up losing my job and getting divorced from my 25-year marriage, all in a very short time frame, which completely changed the trajectory of my career. So at that
Yeah.
point, I had to decide who I was, where I
Yeah.
was going. Was I going to be the same person? Was I going to wallow in what just happened to me? And
Yeah.
that was the point where I remade my life. And I had to decide, what is it you really love about the work that you are doing or were doing? What I decided I loved is partnering and coaching leaders. I loved supporting leaders and had the opportunity to do that both as a chief nurse and a hospital CEO. And I thought, I want to do more of that. I want to leave all that other stuff
Yeah.
behind, right? All the other stuff that I didn't like. So that began my journey into really becoming a coach and focusing on at that aspect of how would my path have changed had I
Mm.
formal leadership training,
Mm.
development, and skill set. Now, there are certainly no excuses here, because I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
As evidenced by promotion after promotion and that sort of thing. But I
Yeah.
still look back and I wonder, I think I could have been even better. I think I could have served from a different place had I
Mm.
had formal training. So that's just a little bit of a story. After that crisis in my life, I went on to publish 4 books and to really just sort of emerge, right, as this brand new person, and that brings me to where I am today.
Amazing, Rhonda. What a fascinating journey. And, points in your journey, there's obviously been that opportunity for you to take a step back and redefine what it is that you're wanting to do. What is your purpose? What do you really want to stand for? Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really helpful. And I
Mhm.
think what you share as well is quite typical and common of many leaders that find themselves in people leadership positions, that they've gone through the ranks, they've escalated or accelerated in their careers because technically they're really good at their job.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, they then not had that, specific leadership training to really understand how they can elevate and increase their impact on people. And, I find that it's such an interesting space because a lot of the coaching sessions that I have with my clients and the leadership development programs that we run, there's so many aha moments in those, because leaders look back and they think, well, I really wish I would have known this at the start of my leadership journey. It really would have made such a difference in terms of how I showed up, the way that the decisions that I made, and the impact that I had on those around me. I'm
Mhm.
so glad we're talking today. Really, really pleased. I want to hear from your perspective because self leadership, when I talk about self leadership, it's all about thinking about how you, as a leader, firstly, understands yourself. So, to be able to lead others, you've really got to know who you are, who you stand for, what you're about, what your strengths are, what your biases are. Be aware of all of that because that awareness is really key. I'd love to hear from you, Rhonda. What's your definition on self leadership? What do you mean by that? It'd be really helpful for our audience to know.
Absolutely. So, not too dissimilar from your definition, but the way I describe it is, and we do a lot of work around self leadership in the Mentoring and Coaching Academy. So I like to say, self leadership is the external expression of your internal compass.
Mhm.
Okay, it really gives us an idea of where you are pointed. Now, what's really important about that is that's in that moment. So there's a general way that you tend to show up as a leader, but there's also that in the moment that you show up, right? So it is that external expression and how you show up and how you react, respond, how you're thinking and processing about that really gives us an indication of
Mm.
your ability, your strength, your skill set of your self leadership. So I think from that perspective, I like to say sometimes your self leadership shows up before you do, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it will precede you because people will have an expectation and an anticipation of what to expect based on historically what you've shown them, right?
Mm,
And so all of that for the leader is important feedback.
absolutely. I really like the way you've defined that. It really makes sense. And I think it's key to be able to really do that inner work,
Mhm.
focus on doing the inner work. That's what's really going to create that transformation. And that's then what's going to be experienced by those that are led by you. That's where the impact really happens when it's expressed and it's experienced by those around you. So fascinating, Rhonda.
Mhm.
Really love that. I'd love to understand from your perspective. So, when we talk about bias, from your own experience, and from your experience working with clients, how does bias manifest itself from a self leadership perspective?
Yeah, bias is really interesting. And I think just for a bit of level setting, bias, it's important for us to know that we all have bias, right? If you have a brain, you have bias. And
Yes.
so that's just a given. So it's not, it depends on how that is manifesting itself and how that's showing up. That really is something that you want to evaluate. Is this something that I want to really uncover, do that inner work? And make some adjustments in those biases and particularly how they're impacting others. So that's important for us to know. Bias can be a good thing, right? Because our brain doesn't want to handle all those details and it doesn't want to make every single decision independently. So your brain says, hey, let me put some things in a box. I'll put these things over here. I'll put these things over here. And that gives you some of your biases. I'll talk to one of my biases. I like to use this example. So, one of the ways that your biases can show up is for me personally, I am not a huge fan of chocolate ice cream, right? People go, what do you mean you don't like chocolate ice cream? I'm just not a huge fan of chocolate at all, but chocolate ice cream in particular. So I walk in the room and there's this table full of ice creams. On one side, there's all of these varieties of chocolates. On the
Mm,
other side, there are strawberries and vanillas. I'm going to go to the strawberry and vanilla side, right? Because that's just my bias. I lean towards those types of ice creams. However, what I may not recognize is there could be one of the most delicious, most decadent, fantastic chocolate ice creams ever created in the history of the world, right? And
and
guess
you're
what?
missing out.
I know I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it because I've got a bias and I'm just thinking, chocolate ice cream is not for me, right? So it's important for us to understand our biases. And in leading yourself around that, Simi, it's so important that we begin to sort of be aware of
Yeah,
our tendencies, right? We are always going to have biases. We will never be perfect. But the idea is to lessen our impact, the impact that our
Mm.
biases have on others, particularly in a negative way. That's really what we're going for. And awareness is what really begins to take us in that direction.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. The awareness is really key because, as you rightly say, we very easily are in autopilot mode. We're
Mhm,
just, busy with things. We've done certain things a number of times. So that it becomes repetitive, it becomes second nature. And it's at those times that we can get tripped up. Like you said, you're going to be diverted to all the other selection of ice creams. And then that one ice cream that you're not looking at could be the absolute deluxe of the day. And we miss out on it. And that's the same thing with in the workplace. If you, as a leader, are always kind of going to the same people for putting them forward for projects or seeking the same people for feedback or ideas or views on certain decisions, it's going to cloud what's coming back to you. And you easily can miss out on information, insights, giving others opportunities that also could be good or even better than what you're getting at the moment. So it's absolutely about being aware. I think the other thing that's really important is to ensure that when we are making any kind of significant decisions, especially people related decisions. So if we look at the employee life cycle, when we're attracting talent into the organization, when we're selecting talent, when we're then going through the process of promotions, all those are key decision making points. And if we can look at that employee life cycle and look at really ensuring how we can minimize bias taking place throughout those key moments, I think as a leader, we can make a definite, significant difference.
mhm. Simi, that's such an important point. So I've done a lot of hiring in my career,
Yeah.
and I look back on it now and I think about some of my biases in terms of those hiring. I always wanted the more experienced nurses. That
Yeah.
didn't mean they were the best nurses. It just meant they had more experience, right? They
Yeah.
probably had more history, they had more habits, they had more of lots of things. But all I was looking at was, oh, I want the ones with the most experience, thinking that they were going to be the best. But what about that infusion of youth, of openness, of
Right.
moldability and just willingness to jump in there and learn and grow, right? And so we tend to miss those things when we are really focused on our bias. And the hiring process is really an interesting one, right? There's been a lot of studies about how we call and recruit based on names, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Making determinations of, are the names gender specific, which there's really no way for us to know that, but we
Yeah.
make lots of assumptions based on names and many other factors. And so that's really a great example of, as a leader, a
Mm.
place where our biases can come into play. And then the
Mm.
question becomes, can you build a process
Mm.
accounts and sort of minimizes for some of that, right? Can you build a
Absolutely.
double-blinded process or a
Yeah.
group or a team process to really help account for some of those innate biases?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. So we work with a lot of leaders and organizations to help them really put in place processes and structures that will help them to minimize bias
Mm,
so that they are then hiring and being able to get inclusive outcomes.
right.
And structure and process is definitely in line with the British Psychological Society's best practice, the Australian Psychological Society's best practice of assessing. So I
Mhm,
think that's part of like ensuring leaders in the organization that are making those hiring decisions are trained to assess in the correct way. And there's also a very solid structure and process in place that's objective.
mhm.
So yeah, lots of key kind of strategies that organizations leaders can put in place around that. I want to ask you in terms of self-leadership and bias, from creating an inclusive culture, what's your experience been about how we go about doing it? Where have you seen that it's worked well or
Yeah,
not worked?
that's a really great question, Simi, because For inclusive environments, we hear so much today about DE&I, D&IB, and then including justice. There's so much happening there. But I
Yeah.
think what's really important for us to consider as we think about this is what each of those elements means, right?
Mm,
And then where you as an organization are going. So it's
mm,
important that you are clear as an organization on what your goal is, what you're
yeah.
hoping to accomplish. I talked to one organization that said, we recognize we're not the most diverse organization, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to be better in this area. So can you point us and help us hire more diverse candidates?
Mm,
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 well, not so fast, right? So I got a lot of questions
yeah.
before I'm recommending you hire any diverse, and that's not even a great term to use. But my questions were, what's your purpose? What's your culture? What have you done to prepare the environment for these folks to come in, right? So diversity is one aspect of that. Then
Mm,
you've got inclusion, which is another aspect of that. And that's a lot of what we're talking about here. Whose voices are you listening to? Who are
yeah.
you inviting to that conversation and valuing and lifting? So they say diversity is just a fact. It's a
Yeah.
number. It either is or it isn't.
Mm,
Inclusion is a choice, right?
correct.
Inclusion is about who you're inviting to the party, who you're bringing in. I
Yeah.
like to move beyond those two to
Mm,
belonging. Right?
mm,
Belonging is ultimately where we want to get to because belonging is that feeling that's created. Oh,
yeah.
I'm valued. I want to be here. People accept me for who I am. I have a voice, right? And I am respected and recognized. When you get there, you
Mm,
really know that you've done those other pieces well.
absolutely, Rhonda. And belonging is our innate drive for connection.
Mhm.
And you really hit the nail on the head because ultimately that's what we want. And most of us spend more than half of our waking day working.
Right.
And if we look at it from that perspective, why wouldn't we want to be in an environment where we feel we can ultimately belong, we're connected, we can have deep relationships and bring our whole selves to work?
Mhm.
So, yeah, really key point there. Absolutely. I want to ask you, and before I do ask you the next question, let me just check in and see if there are any questions on the chat. So please let us know. For those of you that are listening, welcome to Sharon, Melissa. Thank you for joining. Please put your questions in the chat if you do have any questions or comments. Um, Excellent. Thank you, Melissa and Sharon. So Melissa's saying, absolutely, you definitely have to be self-aware to be able to lead yourself and do so effectively. I think you're absolutely right, Melissa. It's really about leading yourself first. You got to get your own stuff together first. And then you can lead and have that impact on others. So that self-work is really, really critical. And Sharon, really agree with your point as well around belonging is our innate drive for connection. Definitely. So Rhonda, I'd love to ask you if there were 3 key tips that you could share with our audience around increasing their self-leadership. What 3 nuggets would you like to share?
So this is a tough one for me, right? Because I view self leadership as a journey, and the work that we do in the Mentoring and Coaching Academy is taking leaders by the hand and taking them on that journey, going on that journey with them, the journey of self exploration, and really acknowledging your level of awareness, ownership, et cetera. So we cover that in like 8 modules and 24 lessons. So let me boil it down to three, which is really challenging. But I'll touch on three that I like to call all, ALL.
Okay.
A is for awareness. Now, when we're talking about awareness, it's awareness of self,
Mm,
including your mental, your emotional, your overall physical well-being, right? So how are you? How are you doing? And thinking and feeling. But it's also awareness of others, right? So expanding that awareness out and using all of those talents and skills you have to be able to observe and see where other people are. So awareness can't just stop with you, right?
Mm,
Which is the context often that we speak about it in. So that's the A. In that, I have two colleagues and mentors, Casey Lankow and Tim Johannesson, and they are from A Deeper Way, which is an amazing program where we do that deep inner work. And they have a podcast called Psychology at Work, and they like to say, you really got to own your own stuff. Right. So when they're talking about awareness, it's that first place where how many of us are really owning our own stuff? Or are we putting it on others? So that's the A. The L is for listening. I
mm,
love the listening in this because it's a deeper,
mm,
richer type of listening that we're talking about. Not the surface listening to what's in my head as someone else is talking. I'm already formulating my responses, but
yeah,
really listening deeply to
mm,
two things: what is being said
mm.
and what's not being said.
Correct.
We as individuals often shy away from conflict. We don't always want to go there, right? We don't always want to have those difficult conversations. So, as a leader, if you are in tuned, if you are astutely listening, you can pick up some of those and you
Mm,
can open up the space for that conversation to occur. So, that's
mm,
the L in that. And then the third one is the second L, so ALL, the final L is languaging,
mm,
right? And it's in really being intentional with our words and using our words as a bridge to create connection, to really close the gap between where we are and where others are, so that
mm,
we form those bonds and we are creating those inclusive environments where people feel heard, valued, respected, accepted. A part of that is our languaging. And Simi, I wanted to just throw one example out here. For instance, we often say, well, we need to be professional. What
mm.
does that really mean?
Yeah,
By whose standard?
exactly.
How have you defined professional? If I
Yeah.
like red hair, bright pink red hair, does that make me not professional?
And
Right?
this taps into our stereotypes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So languaging is important. Sometimes we use coded language and we're not even aware of it. So I like to say what you mean and don't use the buzzwords. Don't use toxic environment, professional. Say what you mean instead and be really clear about that. So the 3 points I would say for leaders who are looking to improve self-leadership is the acronym ALL, ALL. It's awareness, it's listening, and it's languaging.
Love that, Rhonda. A really, really helpful acronym for us all to remember. So thank you so much. Just to wrap things up, I think it's a really key point in terms of it's not always what we say and what we do, it's how we leave other people feeling. And
Mhm.
we can do that in so many ways. In terms of one of those ways is the language that we use.
Right.
Is it inclusive? Is it creating connection? The small micro moments of eye contact, engagement, all of that is so key. And again, plays a powerful part in terms of how we can really connect with others and make them feel included. And, I really agree with what you say. Diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. And many people think that, inclusion is going to happen, um, by default if you've got a diverse workforce. It's not. You can have a diverse workforce, but they can all be really segregated in their own little groups. So the out group, in group behavior is really, really important to get our heads around to see how we can really put strategies in place to make people feel more that they belong.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, really love your insights, everything you've shared with us today, Rhonda. Any final comments from yourself?
I think the final comment for me is as leaders in organizations, it's really important for us to get to the place where we are not allowing a good deed to go wrong, right?
Mm,
And what's the good deed? The good deed is hiring good people, hiring good technicians, promoting wonderful, great people from within without giving them the support and the opportunity to grow into that role appropriately, right? So that they have the skill set to meet the rising demands and the challenges that that role brings, not their current, not their previous role, right?
Mm.
So as an organization, we have to be aware if Nancy is amazing at what she does, that's great. But if you're going to give her the keys to the castle, then it is our responsibility to support her growth and development in that process as well. So I think that's really important. And that's one of the ways that we help at Leadership Above the Grind Mentoring and Coaching Academy.
Fantastic. And I think, at the end of the day, it's really about setting ourselves up for growth and those around us for growth as well. Setting up for growth is really, really key. I'd rather not say the word setting up for success, because success means different things to everyone. But if it's really setting up for growth, we're looking for transformation, we're looking for evolutionary growth, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's a continual journey, which is really exciting. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in your world, Rhonda. Would you like to just share with everyone one of the key things that is going on and that you'd like to share some information on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've mentioned a couple of times the Academy. We're really excited. So talk about 2022 being a really great year and off to a wonderful start between the award and then the launching of the Academy. I'm just on cloud nine right now. And what I love about the work that we're doing at the Academy is we develop the leaders that you want to lead your team. Right. So we are partners with you. We are helping to support your growth as an organization and help you hit your targets, your bottom line, whatever your cultural and strategic initiatives are. We're helping to do that through the Academy. So we use a combination of skill-based mentoring and coaching lessons. And then we combine that with the deep inner work that allows you the application. Because without application, there is no transformation, right?
Mm.
Without application, there is no transformation. Information alone is not power. It's simply information. It is power when it is applied and it leads to that transformation that we're looking for.
Excellent. And how can people reach you, Rhonda, for more information about the Academy and to join the Academy?
Absolutely. So I'm always on social, right? I'm on social media. They can reach me on LinkedIn, and I am Rhonda Y. Williams on LinkedIn. They can go and visit the website at elitementorcoachingacademy.com. That's elitementorcoachingacademy.com. They can reach out to me directly. So feel free to email me. You can reach me at RY Williams at elitementorcoachingacademy.com. And I would just love for even any questions or to explore what we do at the Academy to see if that's something that could benefit you as an individual leader or your organization.
Amazing. Thank you, Rhonda. Excellent. And I just want to wrap up by saying thank you to everyone that's listening, that has joined the conversation today or watching the conversation on replay. It's a really important topic. It's timely. Just because it's been International Women's Day earlier this week, it shouldn't just be a day. From my perspective, it's all about how we look to elevate humanity, both genders, where, to be fair, gender becomes irrelevant, and it's all about leading ourselves and those around us to make the biggest impact that we can and to advance humanity for really a fairer and happier world. Thank you all for joining. Please take care, and we look forward to seeing you next Friday on Wellbeing Faces Live. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda.